approve the minutes from 4/17/23.
So moved.
Second. I'm just going to strike Keith, wasn't here last meeting. If we could strike him from being an attendee, that'd be great. That's all I saw. All right, all those in favor? All right, before we get to number 3, citizens' comment, I would like to introduce and vote on the new language and new protocol for citizen comments, which was sent out to the community last Thursday as well. So, moving forward, we'll make a motion to vote on this. Folks can sign up prior to the meeting, either via email or sign-up sheet at the meeting, which is back there as well, with your name and topic. The board will recognize citizens based on the sign-up sheet and/or prior email request. If the agenda item to be discussed is not appropriate for the school board meeting, the correct channel for that topic will be advised. And if you are part of a committee, club, organization, or the like, and it is on the agenda, we would expect you to contribute to updates regarding that agenda item where appropriate. In keeping with the SB 410 bills and RSA 18974, we remind citizens that comments regarding student, staff, and/or teachers will be reasonably restricted. You live in a small community, so this can be extra difficult, and I appreciate your support. Any motion?
Make a motion to approve said policy.
Seconded. Any discussion from the board? No. Okay, all those in favor? Thank you. So with that, we'll move on to citizen comments. And I know we had a write-in from Jessica and Joe, so you guys would like to go?
Yes, so one, thank you for letting us speak. We wanted to take the opportunity to reiterate in the setting of the school board meeting our concern that you eliminated public comment at the April school board meeting. We do understand that you are also in receipt of our letter of April 17th and the 9 attachments. As transplants to New Hampshire, we've always valued highly the public discourse at our town and school board meetings. Although we both, having served in a variety of board and committee roles in our professional and public lives, shared the discomfort we felt at managing potentially inappropriate commenters, the extreme option of shutting down public comments last month felt like an unnecessary attack on the meaning of healthy and constructive discourse that we thought of as a hallmark of our town. The timing felt especially poor given the presentation of the high school options committee was scheduled, a project that has been both difficult and controversial, and whose outcomes have long-term impact on the education of the student citizens of our town. We, of course, then read with great interest your new comment, processed the guidelines that came out with the e-news. And thank you for highlighting SB 410 and RSA 18974. As stated plainly in the law you cite, although you do have the authority to reasonably restrict citizen comments, both the spirit and the letter of that law that you cite preserve our right as citizens to publicly comment during school board meetings. Specifically, that law requires every public school board meeting to include a public comment period of at least 30 minutes at the start of every meeting. Pre-registration may not be required, and any standards you impose must be imposed equally. So to be clear, although you may reasonably restrict public comments when appropriate confidentiality is in jeopardy, you cannot do so by requiring pre-registration as you did at the April meeting. And even tonight in what you just passed, the idea that we have to sign up seems to go against what that law says. So when taken in its entirety, it seems the current law, which reduces your current processing guideline to merely a request for pre-registration rather than a requirement. What we would like to point out is that given its general lack of specificity with regards to important details, like where we would send an email to sign up, the mechanism of review for a request for comment, the opportunity to appeal if a comment's not allowed, it doesn't really seem to add anything to the carefully thought out recommendations that the New Hampshire School Board Association, membership in which our town funds your participation, not to mention the many policies that you already have in place that go to public comments regarding staff, other people, things like that, as well as common procedures at school board meetings. We thus, again, respectfully request for you to reconsider your policy and procedures regarding public comments, or process, or whatever it is that you'd like to call it. As the New Hampshire School Board Association notes, It is a long-standing and important tradition in New Hampshire that local governments allow some form of public comment at regular school board meetings. Moreover, it's imperative that a board enforce its rules fairly and with regard to a speaker's message, and without regard to a speaker's message. Your actions at that meeting, and we believe even in passing what you just did, are going to have a chilling effect on our town's healthy democratic discourse as well as our relationships. We're a small community who's generally made decisions and solve problems together, and we see no reason why we would not be able to do that together.
Thank you. Jessica, did you want to move on to the high school options?
We can wait until that comes up.
Okay. All right. And you didn't have anything right now. You have yours with Whitney Center.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go check the back sheet. This is Pam? Thank you.
And I do think it's important that we kind of clarify what
Yeah.
Jessica said about in regards to, right, but in regards to having, requesting people sign up for public comments, she is correct in that we can't require that. We are just requesting that.
Right.
We can request it.
Right. Absolutely. And we agree with that.
I don't think our policy means that we won't take public comments and take them up. I think we're required to that law. I think we understand that. Do we not?
Yes, we're just requesting sign-up, so we have some.
We just wanted to make it clear, because conversation we had with folks, it seems confusing to people, and we just wanted to be out there for everyone transparently that it's not required. People can show up to meetings, they'll still be heard, especially if it's on the agenda. It's a First Amendment right that we have once you put that on the agenda to be heard. And honestly, it's unfortunate we're even at this point because it's been many years now that we've been able to just go back and forth even to hash these out. So we're also just lamenting that.
And you were required by law in April meeting, right?
We were not aware of that in the April meeting.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Jen, Sasha would like to speak at the high school, about the high school.
As well? Okay, yeah, you can just write it in. Okay. Any other citizen comments? Thank you. Presentation of school programs.
We do. We have some students here and some staff who would like to share with you all some of the activities and learning that the students did around the medieval studies that they did. So I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Heisler and Mrs. Porter, who will introduce the kiddos and show you the work they did.
Guys, come on up.
Right. So, these guys are a little nervous because they stand on Thursdays and talk to their peers, but they don't usually talk to a whole bunch of grown-ups. When they came walking in, they're like, who are all these people? So anyways, the school board and those of you who are families here know that one thing that we do in the upper house is we work through science and social studies topics often within an integrated unit, in a part of our day that we call integrated block. So they don't know whether it's science and social studies or writing or math or whatever. And this particular one was our social studies unit about history, and it was about Middle Ages or medieval times. And so we developed an essential question that is something like, what is daily life like during the Middle Ages, or how is it different from today? So in order to answer this question, we watched a video, we did some reading, we did a little bit of research. Then we did some writing, we did some poetry, we did some PE, and we and then we celebrated it all with a feast that we learned about. These guys are going to tell you a little bit about each part of what we did. So we're going to start, and Brody is going to talk a little bit about, and some other people are going to demonstrate a little bit about what we learned in PE. So come on, step forward so everybody can hear you better. Oh.
In the Middle Ages, people were entertained by dances, jiggling, scars and balls, double sticks, and dilobes. I don't know. Dilab. My words might not.
That's all right. So we didn't have the primary dancers weren't. We didn't have enough of the dancers who performed at the feast to give us a little demo of the dancing. But these guys are going to show you a couple of the things that they learned. So imagine you're at a feast in a great room in a castle, and the entertainers are here. Mrs. Porter, do you want to add anything about it?
Yes, because of the timing, we only had one class to come up with doing a little bit of research, what they wanted to do, and to learn it. Some of them had a little bit of experience in the juggling before in another class, but they took their recess time. The dancers, a group of them, were 4, and one of the students was away that day, so they taught her the dance during recess time so that she could be part of the performance. And again, they were trying all of them, and within 30 minutes, they had to decide what they were going to do, take about 10 minutes of practice time, go ahead at recess to practice more before they performed. So they did really well.
They did really well.
Pull that together.
Independent, those kind of soft skills you think about. So working independently and working with a group always goes in. So, Brody, you want to tell us the next thing that we're going to talk about is in order to learn about the Middle Ages, every student was kind of randomly given an identity. So come on.
People's names were related to their role in society. For example, Royal or Nova would be Lord or Lady from a certain towns like Sir George and Sir Gregory of Sir, or a tradesperson might have a name that is related to their job, like George's Spark Baker. Or they might have a certain name based on their family. For example, Abigail Davis.
So Sir Gregory from Shrewsbury happens to be here. When you look in the books that we gave in front of you, Gregory's going to talk a little bit about the books when we get there. But school board members, I put a book in front of each of you to look at, and Lloyd has one, and the admin has one. When you look at those, you'll see the kids included in their identities. So they had to make up an identity based on the role that they were assigned. And Gregory, being a 6th grader, was nobility, of course. So in the book, another thing is heraldry. So Bailey, come right on out front and let's talk about heraldry.
Common nights were often covered from head to toe, so it was hard to tell who was who. They developed a coat of arms they could display on a ship or flag or banner. The symbols and colors represented different holidays. For example, a griffin for bravery might stand. Purple might be the color for a leader, for example. We made our own coat of arms based on what our class thought our values, qualities were, and other things that represented us.
And along with it, they made a motto. That's part of having a coat of arms. What is your motto, Bailey?
Survival through hard work because I was a peasant.
She was a peasant. Her role as a peasant, so her motto became survival through hard work. So when you look in the books, you'll see that everybody did their own coat of arms and then described why they chose all of the things they did. And some kids chose colors based on their favorite things. And some kids chose colors based on feedback they got from their classmates about their qualities. So if they, if 10 classmates wrote down on a little slip of paper that they were a good leader, they might have chosen purple or one of the animals that went with leadership, right? Nora, let's talk about found poetry.
Found poetry is poetry that uses a book, or we used a couple of really old books that we made into stories. So we grabbed some words from the book and we crossed out every other word and made it into a poem. And the poem could be like you can use the poem for facts, or it could just be a poem.
So, and again, in the books, there are examples of found poetry. Some of them are super creative, like Nora's. Instead of just circling and crossing out words, she kind of made a little design on hers. Some people use colors. I think you used color in yours. So found poetry, we happened to use texts that are, here's Bailey's. So Bailey's and Nora's, Bailey ended up using color on hers and Nora made a design on hers. So we ended up using two really outdated books, one about knights and one about heraldry. So the kids had to read through those passages and then go through and circle words, and there's a whole system they use to make found poetry. Sometimes it's just a poem, but sometimes we also use a social studies textbook. And when we copied the textbook, sometimes you could find a poem that summarized a paragraph, but did it in a poetry form. So, found poetry. Next is you, my friend, to talk about our books.
So in the 456, the upper house made books on the table and stuff there. And we done by recycling like old books that were not going to be used anymore. And we made like cardboard-ish paper over the covers and stuff. And then we put watercolor over it. And some of us get tape, some of us just watercolor that.
So that it looks like what?
So it looks like an old book from the medieval.
Looks like
Yeah, leather and stuff. You have your table of contents, so talking about what's in the book. And we all made maps for what Europe looked like during the medieval. And basically once Bailey was talking about it, Don found old fairy tales. Yeah, fairy tales and folk tales, and I picked the Taylor. You might know that one. And found poetry. I put mine in the crown because that's nobility. And you have your interesting facts and stained glass and your identity. Your identity, which I put mine in a scroll. And yeah, that's it.
So the book was a way for them to put all of their pieces together to show us what they knew to answer the question. These books are so fun to do. They're labor intensive, right, Ms. Morris?
Yes.
They're really labor intensive. But there's something that kids keep forever. Gregory's brother, Jeffrey, is a freshman in high school, and we used his for an example, and Mrs. Bailey brought in one of her kids, Camden, who's a freshman in college, and still had his at home. So the books are a great way to do it. One of the fun other things that we do, Bailey, hold yours up, is to make a little bookmark for the books. We dug out the shrinky dinks from my childhood, and they all traced their coat of arms, and they shrinky dink was those. So we're going to end with the last performer today. But before that, I just want to, the one thing that I wanted to say is that, so we have this feast. And in the Middle Ages, you know, the king would invite everybody to the feast. And there were certain places for everybody. Obviously, the peasants ate way in the back or outside, and they're prepped for days. They cooked peacocks and then stuck the feathers back in the peacocks so it looked pretty. And we found some copycat recipes and made things that were similar to what they might have been. Families shared things like deviled eggs and roast chicken. We worked together to make the fourth service, which is like dessert. So that was kind of the math part of our integration. So we made bread pudding, gingerbread, candied almonds, and baked apples. And then we had a big feast, and the feasts could last all day or for days then. Ours just lasted a good part of the day. And then the next part of what we're doing coming up, we put it aside till afterwards, is we're tying our physical science unit into this, and we're going to be doing some catapults, some bow and arrows, doing some STEM challenges about how to cross a moat, how to climb a castle wall, those kinds of things. So it's all going to kind of be tied together. So last but not least, the other part of this is that every kid had to, as Gregory said, every kid had to memorize a story, right? And they had to tell their story to, some kids stood in front of at the feast, everybody told it to their buddies, and then everybody recorded them using the green screen that Mrs. Enville talked about 2 meetings ago, and those are still a work in progress. But we have a storyteller here today. Can we do a quick juggle? Oh, yeah. Go ahead and do a juggle, and this guy will step right up and be ready to tell his story.
In the Middle Ages, they told stories for entertainment and also to teach a lesson. Here's my story. Once upon a time, there was a chef named Bill who worked for a town mayor. The town mayor said, "Please prepare me 2 fine hens because I'm expecting a guest later today." So Grandma went to the store and bought the 2 fine hens that the mayor was expected. So she went home and cooked those fine hens over a slow fire.
when they were done, they smelled delicious. Rebel said, "Mayor, are my guests here yet?" And the mayor said, "No, I don't see them coming." "Oh dear," said Rebel. "Oh dear," said Rebel. My bird is getting cold and my guests haven't arrived yet." But those juicy, tender legs look really good. So she took one of the legs and took a bite of it. "Oh my, that hen is one of the best, is the tastiest hens I ever tasted, one of the finest I cooked. But the bird looks weird when one wing." So I should eat the other leg. Soon enough, both legs from the first hen were gone. Maybe I should try the upper hen and see if it's equally as good. So she ate one of the legs from the upper hen. "Oh my, that tastes even better than the last hen." Soon enough, both were gone. "Gretel, I can see my guests coming walking on the stone path. Please prepare the table of the chicken, or hen." Coming," said Gretel. Gretel had an idea. She could tell the lie that the mayor was going to cut off the guest's ears so she could get away with eating both birds. Suddenly, the guests arrived at the back door by mistake. Because they thought the back door was the entrance. And Gretel said, "Mayor, Gretel, yes, quickly run through the life. The mayor asked you to come to a fine feast, but he actually plans to cut off your ears." Okay, thank you for telling me," said the guest. So the guest started running towards the road. Then Gretel said, "Mayor, he stole the chicken. Do you think he'll remain?" "No, he took the pear," Gretel lied. So the mayor got up and started running after the guest with his knife over his head. "I only want one. Do you hear me?" So the poor mayor only wanted both the birds, one of the hens, but the guest thought he only wanted one of his ears, so he kept on running.
Master presentation. Take a look at the books if you guys want to while you're here. And you guys can excellent job. Everybody did a good job. Your public speaking skills are on. I know. That's another reason why we do it. There's so many learning things there and speaking we didn't even realize. Very cute. Sorry, get the right in there.
Any other school programs? No? No? That was amazing. Yeah, I must say, we are one of the only schools in the district that really prepare our kids for public speaking with our Thursday morning meetings. The kids get up every week, and all the parents know, people that are through with others. As they move on, it's one of my soapboxes with Bartlett is to keep the kids presenting all the time. It makes such a huge difference for life skills. So they did such a great job. That was awesome. Old business?
No.
Thank you. Instructional issues, we're going to take, I'd like a motion to accept, to vote all together for a 6A 1 through 13 for the second reading and adoption of policies.
Motion to approve policies 1 through 13 on the agenda. Approve them for adoption on the second reading.
I'll second that.
Okay, moving on to IG.
You need to vote on
We have a vote on that, correct. All those in favor? Okay. IGDB student publications. I'm going to vote on each one. If somebody has a question, there might be one or two down here. IGDB student publications. IGDD student productions, which we just saw. IGDF student fundraising activities. IGDG student activities fund management. IJOC volunteers. Make some changes to that. DA employee time and effort reporting and procedures. JH student absences and excuses. BDA board organizational meeting. BCF advisory committee to the board. BEDD rules of order. JBA residency. Personnel policies for non-contracted employees. And personnel policies for principal. Great. All right, 7, consider personnel actions except resignation of Helen Crowe.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor? This does mean that we will need a nurse. She's a nurse, so we will be on the lookout for a solution for that. Election of Amy Default as paraprofessional.
So moved.
Second. Questions? No? Good? All those in favor? Okay, consider increase in support staff hours for 23-24 school year. Do you need a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any questions, concerns on that one? We've been over it, but it is needed.
It's very much needed, and I think it's a key way to keep our school supporting the students that we have.
Right. Okay, so all those in favor? And inactive position, that's just an FYI. Does anyone have any questions on that?
What does that mean?
Gail, do you want to?
We have had a one-to-one aide position, the student is moved.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, but so then what happens to the position? Like,
So,
So we're inactivating that position, and I'll talk a little bit more about why we opted to increase the other 2 para positions.
so anytime a position gets created, regardless of whatever, if you wanted to bring in somebody new, it has to go through the board, it has to be created by board vote. And then if it is deactivated, let's say, then it's an informational piece.
Okay.
It's kind of a way of keeping the board honest, so it's, we don't want to just have positions that, we can fill whatever we want to, so.
Okay, business affairs, FYI 22-23 budget status report.
You guys are down to the wire, cutting it very close. There may be a need, we'll keep close. You do have a special education trust fund that we may have to tap into to cover some costs. We get close. We're
And-
close.
Close, keep an eye on it. And the FYI other is the audit letter. If there's any questions on that?
No.
So we did great. All right, approval of memorandum of the understanding for the Whitney Center. Second. All right, all those in favor?
Thanks.
Time, it's all good.
Yep, yeah, thanks for, and Jim Hill for meeting with me. So that, just to let you all know, then I'm gonna take this to the select board meeting, which is next week, I think is the next one. So, hopefully, we'll be all set.
Emily, thanks for helping us out.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing it all. You're like the point contact too.
It was very interesting.
Yeah. All roads led back to you. I kept reading and I'm like, we're back to Emily. And we're back to Emily, so. I have any issues.
So let's hope we never, ever have to
Have to
do
use
it.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good.
Yeah, but thanks for the good work on
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a lot of work.
One thing I learned in that meeting was just how entailed your job is for that. It's amazing. So-
There's nothing until there's everything.
Yep, so thank you. We're gonna do 8D as appointment, school board treasurer. So we didn't have any, but we have Noah Weeder.
Make a motion to approve Noah Weeder as the school board treasurer.
Second. All those in favor? Thank you. All right, administrative reports.
Yeah, just a few things as we turn the corner in May. High school graduation is around the corner. There will be Jackson students who do graduate this year. That'll be on June 10th. And as we've done in the past couple of years through COVID, one of the nice pieces is they do a parade of all the graduating seniors up through town and down through town. So if you're out on the Friday prior to graduation around 4:30, 5 o'clock, it's just a nice way to send off the students to graduation. We did have an SE9 school board meeting the other night. I know folks were busy here with the beautiful artwork that's on the walls here. New Hampshire School Board Association did do a very nice presentation as well, talking about roles, responsibilities, right to know, all of those pieces. We will need representatives on the SE9 Wellness Committee, the Curriculum Committee, and the County School Board Budget Committee. And without further ado, we do have a special guest here tonight. We have Principal, as we transition, begin that process for next school year, Erin Mercer. She's here, give her a nice little wave. She was in town, and we met this morning, and she said, I'd like to come up to the school board meeting. So she has another school to finish, another school year, but we've begun that process, and we have plans for the summer as well to get her on board. So welcome aboard to here. So other than that, no, just lots of great events coming to a close, lots of programming for middle and high school and students this summer as well. So, looking forward to ending the year in a positive note.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, we have to.
Great. And let's see.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. As I mentioned, this is the time of year where we typically take a look at the student population for the next year and make some decisions about the grade level configurations. So for next year, after several meetings, the staff and I got together, 2 months ago or so. We drafted a couple of different options, 2 or 3 different options. And as the year has wound down with teaching staff and students coming and going and schedule and a number of things that we consider, we've decided that we're going to go with a K-1-2 combined class. That class will have 11 students in it, 2 kindergartners, 3 first graders, and 6 second grade students. The 3-4 will be the same as our current 2-3 this year, moving forward with 7 grade 3 students and 6 grade 4 students. That would comprise the lower house. In the upper house, that's where we had a tricky group to figure out. So what we've decided is best for the needs of the students is to have 2 5-6 classes. I know a year before last we did a 2-3 and a 3-4, but this year we feel like the students are best served in a 5-6 class with 1 teacher and a second 5-6 class with 1 teacher. That will enable us to have 2 smaller groups where we'll meet the students' needs best. We have, if you recall, a 15-hour reading specialist position. As I'm leaving, I've been the reading specialist, so we will be hiring or have hired or in the process of hiring a 15-hour reading specialist that I envision providing support in the lower house primarily, with a few kiddos perhaps in the upper house depending. And our full-time special educator will continue to co-teach and service children across the whole school. So this is what the staff and I have concluded would be the best way to configure the grades next year. And so one of the things that we needed to look at to make us all sure that we're meeting needs was to expand those aid positions that have been 6 hours a day. They come and then leave before the end of the day, but now they'll be 35 hours a week, so their first one will be able to stay the entire school day, working 8 to 3. And the second person, as you may or may not know, we have not found a permanent position for our after-school program. So the second upper house aide will work 9 to 5, which will enable them to be a link between the school day and the teachers to the after-school program and staffing for consistency with plans for kiddos and communication. And felt like that would meet those needs really well as well. So,
yeah, just to clarify, we do have an after-school coordinator position who's part-time, but this other position would be the support person.
right, would be the second support person to Owen. And the after-school program is expanding to 4 days a week for most of next year. So we needed to find, we haven't been able to find a full, not a full-time, but an employee to stay with us in that after-school program, because 2 hours a day wasn't a good enough income for somebody who wants, to support a family or do anything, so.
Yeah. Great. So it completes that program.
Right.
Yes.
Great. Any questions?
Any other questions? No? I think it was well thought out, so thank you. I know there's a lot.
And that's why the position that was in the budget for the 1-to-1 aid could be inactivated, which enabled us to expand those other 2 aid positions without adding any money to our budget.
There's a lot of things to consider, so thank you.
And then the second part was just to go over the activities. You saw the youngsters with the medieval. We've had that medieval feast. Last Thursday night, we had a really fabulous show here. You can see some of the art here. What you can't hear is the music, the band, and chorus, and each class prepared a number of songs that they sang for everybody. You should be able to find those on our website, a recording. Our computer tech person, Cynthia, was here, and she recorded it and posted it there, so you can review it. This week is Theater Week. We're performing at Believe in Books on Friday night at 6 o'clock. The kids are really excited. They will spend all week doing a little bit of schoolwork, but a lot of rehearsing and reading of lines and singing and dancing and all those kinds of things. So that's always a really fabulous time for the kids and for the families and for me. Last Friday afternoon, we did, your students might have come home and told you about the Buddy Egg Drop competition that we do. So the older students with their younger buddies, they studied how a feather came down, how a piece of cloth came down, how different materials fell from the second story, but the only one person was out there. And then they went with their younger buddies and designed a carton or canister or some kind of a protective factor to protect their egg as it fell down. And 50% of the students, you'll be glad to know, protected their egg from smashing when it hit the ground. So it was very successful, I thought. I want to thank the PTO and the parents, so some of them have run off, but we were treated with food and flowers and things for Teacher Appreciation Week. So thank you to everybody who contributed to all of that. It brought a smile to all of our faces, so thank you. And that's it.
Thank you. Very busy.
Yes.
Jen? Yes.
Can I just ask a quick question at the end? The 3-4 teacher, will that be the new hire?
Most likely. We haven't signed contracts yet, though, so it's not a dead sign on the dotted line deal. But
And is there an anticipated start date for that teacher?
not at this time.
Okay, so board member issues, we're going to do community reports policy committee, which we did already, and then the personnel committee, which we did. You good with that, Mike? Okay. Facility and transportation, Jerry.
We met with the playground committee. What's that?
You have all these.
The playground committee? Not too much to share from it. Kristen developed, with the others on the committee, the
out very soon, if not already. The minutes, I think, are in the packet as well. So Christina has been in touch with playground committee members, companies rather. And the staff will be surveyed on our staff meeting this week. And let's see what else. We'll be meeting a couple more times this year before summer.
Do we have the grants that we applied for?
Yes, Victoria had applied for 2 grants that we're still waiting to hear from.
Great.
Hey guys, I have a question about the policy committee. I'm probably the first guy to ever ask a question about the policy committee. So I came in a little bit late, but it sounded like maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounded like maybe a policy that the school board voted 3 votes yay and no votes nay last month actually violated First Amendment rights of the community. Is that, was I understanding that correct? No, because I thought,
No.
Jerry, I thought I heard you say, well, we didn't know at the time.
The bill wasn't passed until
It was in effect.
it was in effect, but we didn't know at the time.
And I
is that-
thought that one of your members had also given you an opportunity to vote again on that same policy. And did anybody second that motion? No, nobody seconded that motion. So we've had, with this school board, just in the last few months, we've had questions brought up by the community about transparency. We've had questions brought up about violations of quorum. And now we have a question that it sounds like was asked and answered in the affirmative about a policy that was approved that was ran afoul, can we say, of the First Amendment. So who's on the policy committee and what can you say to the community to assure us that the policy committee is taking these missteps seriously?
So, a few things towards that. So, the First Amendment issue, at the last meeting, the policy we approved was in violation of new state law that was written. Whether or not that rises to the level of a First Amendment violation, we have no ability to pass judgment on this.
Can we agree that if it's in violation of a state law, that probably maybe we shouldn't be doing it here in Jackson?
Well, again, so we changed the policy to conform with the new state law that was passed back in September. And as to the other things, I was not aware that there's questions of transparency and or meeting without a quorum. As I stated in our last meeting, all the business that we conduct here.
Yeah, I mean, a letter that was written to all the members of the school board that was then discussed at the school board spoke specifically to the issue of quorum concerns. And Jerry, I think you addressed that in the meeting. I was at the meeting where it was discussed. It seems like maybe it hasn't been made, that letter hasn't been made public yet, which is also a question of transparency in my mind.
Fair.
So I guess I really, so now that we all sort of are on the same page about what I'm talking about, I'm curious to hear more about how the board views those missteps and can you reassure the community that you're taking those things seriously and that as policies are made moving forward, that there are going to be some steps in place that we are all on the same page throughout the process.
I don't have any comment towards that.
I think we need more specific too in that Jen participating in the high school options committee with 2 members present is a quorum question mark.
So back several months ago, like 6 months ago, we're talking about, so with the committee that's, everybody left.
Would you repeat your
So,
question?
Oh no, there was a question, it was just like to be clear, it was the Jen forming quorum by going to a committee that she wasn't participating on as a community member.
So that was the high school options committee that was posted as a public meeting. That's not a quorum violation.
That wasn't a quorum. We had a high school options committee
that I'm allowed to go to.
that she came to as a community member.
Oh, it's just, I remember when I joined the board several years ago, I was told, if you run into Keith and Jerry at the Shannon door, just give them a wave from across the room, because if you go over and talk to them, you're a quorum.
Well, that's actually not a quorum, I'm not saying that.
That was just the advice I was given.
But at any rate, when that high school options committee was a publicly noticed meeting, that's not a quorum violation, so I don't understand.
I think there's a little bit of confusion. I think that the quorum issue is actually, I think I can speak to that, which is, I think there was a meeting of the high school options committee where, and I think I referred to this in the letter, just to be clear, I think the letter that's being referred to is one that I wrote to the board. And in that letter I said that I understand that in a small town, a quorum happens sometimes inadvertently, like at the last meeting of the high school options committee, I think it was November 17th or something like that, the 21st of 2022. I can't remember the exact date, although I should, because that happened to unfortunately be the day that my mother was passing away, and I missed the meeting, unfortunately, and I really wish I didn't, because I think there would be a different history of this committee. But nonetheless, however, even with the best of intentions, lines become blurred and the process becomes compromised when 3 or 4 of you end up conducting business without the 5th. In that meeting, there were 4 of you, and I believe, Michael, you were not present, but the rest of the board was, and decisions were made, and that ended up being a quorum. And we ended up, to your credit, I wrote my letter, and Jen and Jerry, I want to commend both of you, because we came to that next school board meeting, both of you said, you're right, we're sorry, we're going to do better. So I think that's the initial starting of this conversation. So I'm just jumping in here to kind of clarify that that's part of the history of events here.
Understood. It wasn't about the quorum that we were necessarily saying that we had agreed with you about that on. That was not, as I would still understand today, not a quorum violation. I think that where I was saying that we had what we need to do is that letter needs to be included in the minutes, because that would be a quorum issue. And at the last meeting, it hadn't been, I think, added to the minutes yet. That definitely still needs to be added to the minutes. If it's not, that's a mistake that, yes, we do need to correct.
So we're going to move on to discuss where we are with the high school options committee. So I know Darby gave an update last meeting.
So at last meeting, I handed out the executive summary. There are more copies here today. If you didn't get one at last meeting. The last meeting of the high school options committee was held January 17th. And on May 8th, the other committee member and myself met with Jen as the school board chair and Kevin Richard as our administrator, and we shared the information with them as we saw them going forward and made some suggestions to them. We kind of spoke candidly and felt that Kennett High School and Freiburg seemed to be the most practical options we should focus our attention on at this point in time as far as the 4 schools that we compared, because Robert Frost and Northeast Woodland Inn are public charter, and students are afforded the option to go there by law. The Jackson School Board is going to be having conversations about tuition agreements with Conway and Freiburg, and those tuition agreements need to consider the transportation issues for whatever school is chosen to be recommended. And it is advisable that the school board opt out of the current tuition contract with Conway by June 2024. This does not mean that they cannot continue with Conway, but it'll allow them to modify any kind of a contract with Conway. And we recommended that a presentation to the community take place in the fall, and it would be at the school board's discretion as to what kind of a meeting that would be and whether that would involve a listening post but at this point, the two members of the committee have passed it to the school board.
Any questions? Yep.
So,
Sasha, put it on. Go, okay.
oh, are you sure? So, in reading through this summary, first of all, one of the first things that I noticed was all the names of the committee in the third paragraph of the committee members. But then when I looked to see whether there was any follow-up about resignations, there wasn't. And so I think that most people reading this document could assume that this document reflects the work of the original committee members. But everybody who's still on the committee, from the original committee, could you raise your hand if you're here?
Well, there's no more.
Just nobody, the committee doesn't exist
Right,
anymore.
and to your point, you are correct. When I read over these minutes, I realized that we had not, I didn't see any mention of the timeline of when people dropped off
But the
and
minutes from
resigned.
each, but the minutes from each
The minutes of all the
committee.
agendas reflect when people left, and rather than saying in this month, and at any rate, the agendas reflect
Yes,
who was in
did.
attendance.
Well, I think that people that you have shared this executive summary with could be forgiven if they were confused about who the high school option committee was and who these recommendations represent. When in fact, 6 of the 8 original members resigned from the committee. And so far, those members have not shared their reasons for resigning publicly. But I do think that sharing those members' names might be of concern to those members who had resigned. And it might make those members feel as though they want, or they owe it to the people of Jackson, so that the people of Jackson know why they're no longer members of that committee. I wonder, have you considered informing the people of Jackson more thoroughly about who this actually represents? I think this represents the work of 2 school board members.
Well, we can go back and modify changes of when people left, based on the timeline, and that's fine. During the listening board, I would not recommend that we, put out these people's names as being part of the board. But yeah, I would be curious, and I would, as a chair, I could talk to each person and see why they left. I thought I was kind of aware of that. For time obligations for some other things, were what we were given as notice for people leaving.
Yeah, I think it also would be useful as the school board considers committing $10 million or so of taxpayer money over the next 10 years, that the school board consider engaging the community in this decision. There are no people involved in the decision or contributing to the decision currently who are members of the Jackson community and unaffiliated with the school or the school board. And I think that potentially leaves the school board in the uncomfortable position of maybe having some gaps in understanding of what the priorities are for the taxpayers.
And other communities are doing different things, but most are in the same boat, or not even as community involved as we are at this point. So there will be a listening post in the fall. We're on time with moving forward with items, with the progress that we're making. Jerry's working with Conway, and we'll be working with Freiburg to vet out possible options with them for contracts as we move forward. And that's it right now. What are any other input? No? Sasha?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to just speak here. So, as one of the authors named in this summary, the first sort of policy and procedure point I just want to say is I would have loved to have seen this. I actually didn't leave the committee. I had to pause my involvement in the middle of the winter for some personal reasons, but offered to continue serving. And so I was really excited for your April meeting. I was out of the country, so I couldn't be there. But I looked forward to hearing what the next steps were. You all might remember at the November meeting, one of the concerns that I raised was the methodology that we were using to gather data. I heard loud and clear in this room over and over again, many community members, some with students in school now, some who have alumni from the grammar school, and some who have no kids enrolled in the school, ask for the school board and that committee to explore options and not to default to renegotiating some, you may do this anyway, but not to simply say, well, we already know what this is, it's in the cards, we're doing what we've always done before. This community has been clear. They asked for options. And as we were gathering data, it became really clear to me as a member of that committee that the way we were doing it was a little bit relaxed, I'll say, and encouraged us to work as a committee to find a clear and specific methodology, I think I used the word rigorous, for data collection. And the reason for that is, as your school moderator, I have stood up there and watched your hard work get picked apart in this community because the community has asked for details and the school board hasn't been able to respond with them. And after that meeting, there was no further follow-up on how we might amend the matrix, which is an Excel working document that I think is not available, maybe is available. It was the tool we were using to collect information on the different options. There was no follow-up on that. And then the next thing that I heard was this executive summary, and my name is on it. And attributing authorship to a document without sharing it in advance feels really like problematic policy to me. My name is there. And like James, I saw this come out and went, wait a minute. I definitely would sign off on the data that I collected being shared with all of you because I collected it, it was in my hands, I can speak to where it came from, but I didn't summarize any findings and I didn't summarize any data. And I would love to be a part of this continued process. I also trust in all of you to do it. But I think to attribute authorship to folks and misrepresent, maybe by accident, and I imagine it was by accident, but it just doesn't sit well with me. It's a really poor policy to not share information with people who are going to be named as authors of something before it goes out to the community.
Well, your efforts were great and totally appreciated, and I heard you loud and clear. We were not in a position in January when we ended up with 2 committee members left, and your schedule, you had made it clear you had been doing some traveling, and even left with what we had, looking forward, you had filled in the matrix, and your information was included in the 4 schematics. So that information that you had prepared, and I thought it was fair to say that you were on the committee. You were on the committee. I'm not saying you authored this note at all. I did not say
Right, but Darlene, by including the names of folks here, and Keith Osborne is not here with us tonight, and neither is Wendy Badger, and I don't believe, if I wasn't included on an email preview of this before it went to our entire community, I suspect that they weren't either. And so attributing authorship to a document without sharing it with people being named is the problem I see here. And look, thank you, but I don't need praise for my hard work. I care about the voices in this room being represented in this decision-making process. And this community has come to this room and asked for data collected on options for them to consider for the best solution for high school for Jackson students.
And we ended that out at the last meeting.
Right, and we started that, and there was a lot of concern about the holes in that information. It was imperfect. There's places where that information can be filled in. And I don't need a defensive retort here. What I'm asking is, if the school board, if you are the people who are picking this up now, I'm asking as a citizen of this community for you to hear the call from this community to fill in those pieces and be prepared to present those options to the taxpayers and the parents in this community when the time comes to make a decision.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, we do hear that. It's our money too, and our choices too. So we do hear that. And we will, in future, make sure that that doesn't happen with the names on it. So I appreciate that.
And just to be clear, I understand your position on that and take your point. It's well made. She did start out this presentation saying this executive summary was comprised by the 2 remaining members on the committee. That's what she stated for the record. Now it's part of the record, so by process it's there. I think to be fair, she included this other name because that's how the committee was originally formed. I mean, but your point's taken.
And quite honestly, what I was trying to do was thank you, those people that did help along the way. I certainly was not saying, you know, these people that were there and then didn't help me. Quite honestly, my intentions were to say, you know, these were the people that were there along the way, and, you know, for a variety of reasons.
I hear that.
You know,
And again, I'm not taking it personally, I want you to know that. I think as a point of process, slow down. Send the document out ahead of time. Get the sign off from the people who are participating. Make sure that the policy is known. Make sure you're all clear on it. Just slow down. Like, slow down. Please.
I just wanted to say for the record that I did not resign from the high school options committee. I resigned from the school board and asked to please continue to participate in the importance and the important work of the high school options committee. I did not resign from the high school options committee.
Okay. Jen? So from my standpoint, having not been a part of the high school options committee, it feels like we have a situation where this is a very important subject for our community, and it's been a very important subject for our board. And there have been a number of reasons why this has been pretty herky-jerky in its process, through people being on the committee, through people leaving the committee for various reasons. And I think that I would like to know, as a school board member, what our plan is now, taking the recommendations which were made, but also saying, do we need to look at how this process happened and better, instead of just moving forward, also understand if there's anything that we need to have repair around our community to have that community buy-in as we go forward. Because it feels like it has a series of gray periods in it, and I think that it's unfortunate given the timing and kind of the tenor and the tone around the board. So I would ask that instead of just absorbing public comment and moving forward with this, that we also take a moment and say, what needs to happen? The reason we put this together, like you were saying, Jen, we're so far ahead of the ball, right? Like our community got involved. This is not that we have to have a decision right now. We need to have a decision in the future. We have time to do that better, to Sasha's point about what can be slowed down, and also to go back and say, hey, we need committee members, we need committee members who are, if that's a statement, who are in it and committed, who can be at all these meetings, and all of those steps. So it's not, there was a bit of a chase that was going on from the outside of it, and I think that we need a moment to recalibrate and to say, does this come back to the school board? Is the solution that we are doing a public comment period, or are we saying, we're going to try to revamp and push this out to a committee, but maybe a committee that has a different commitment.
Those are all valuable and well thought out. I have taken up with Darlene and with Kevin, we met last time, to figure out like, what moving forward should we do, you know, because we didn't have to put it out for a community at all, committee. It could have been handled by the school board to begin with. The reason we wanted it to be out to the community was so that the more people involved, the more buy-in that you have as to what changes we're going to make, and the more education that gets out to the community is really what it is. I don't believe any other community had a non-school board committee working on this as well. So it really was, you know, for me, my goal was to have the community involved. And I think unfortunately we got bogged down in the process as opposed to the goal, and working together. So moving forward, we're at a point where we have, you know, we have our information that we need so far. We can reconvene as a school board at some time and make a decision on, do we need another committee on it at that point? Because I feel we have a fair amount of information that the school board can now take and fill in the holes.
But what will that process be? Like if it's a school board, who is doing that? Is that a subcommittee? I'm unclear about what the trajectory is. Like, do we have a separate meeting that is about the high school options committee, or how do
we could? I mean, we can decide that, you know, as we move along. But right now, it's just Darlene, myself, and Kevin, and Erica stayed on for reasons. So, and we wanted to just summarize where we were. So this past last meeting that we had was, okay, we did a reset. Like, where are we? What do we need moving forward? So at this point, we're in a pause mode right now.
Yeah.
We gathered what we had, where Darlene left off with the committee moving forward, and we're trying to figure out, you know, in the fall, we want to have a listening post.
Yeah.
To do that, we need to have all the information that we would like moving forward. So I would like to, you know, meet with each person, I guess now. I thought we had, for most part, why people left, but I would like to revisit that, apparently. I don't know all of everybody's story.
I think my question is there a way that we need to have a higher level of community involvement beyond the listening post that we should be examining? Is there like, or is that, and that's my question to you all, as you're sorting that, is there a committee take two with committed, committee members who are, you know, do we need to look at that, or in consideration of this, do we, because I think we're handling several issues, where A, do we have the information, B, do we have community buy-in? Is the way that this process unfolded, and in some ways some of the murkiness of it, created less community buy-in versus more community buy-in? And if that's the case, is the listening post going to solve it, or is it saying, yes, we're going forward, we want this community committee also with us, and here are our goalposts, and you know, this is what it's going to mean. So that's my question to you all who've been further in it than I.
Yeah, and then I'd have to sit with Darlene and hear why people left the board first before I made a recommendation myself to even reconvene with the committee. Because there were some time constraints and other personal needs, so they're just going to come again, right? And we want to move the ball forward, and at this point, it's data collection.
Yeah.
So do we need a big committee, or do we need still moving forward? So I would say at this point, we're pausing to recollect the information. We did this last meeting, so now it's back to, and now with some new information, I would like to revisit the people to see why they left the committee. And I know many members of the committee have also offered, you know, if we need help, they would be happy to help. Great. So, kind of an input. So Jerry.
So do we still have an options, high school options committee?
No.
So we're starting from
You're starting all over. It's not.
So I mean, to me, we've got to move the process forward probably in a better, maybe more methodical way. Maybe we don't figure that out tonight. And there are some people in this room that could probably help us figure that out pretty well. But I would go back to the original goal of the high school options committee, which was to advise us as to what our options were. That's still information that I'd like to know as a board member, what are our options. To me, because then once the community knows what our options are, then we can have an intelligent discussion about those options so we know where the community is going with it. I don't know whether that makes sense or not to people. And if you have any thoughts towards that.
Sasha,
Yeah, you don't need to respond to this. I just want to give you a real concrete example of like the reason for my madness around data collection. So in the May 8th meeting, that was just a smaller group of you, there is a statement that's made here that Kennett and Freiburg seem to be the most practical options for high school students. You haven't made a decision there, but there's definitely an opinion there, the most practical. So as a community member, what I hope the board will be able to defend is, my first question will be, what makes those practical? From the data that I helped to collect, you have another public high school option that has some really great strengths, better geography, so I would want to know why wasn't that being considered. Again, I don't want the answer tonight, but this community is so incredible at getting their ducks in a row and scrutinizing decisions that involve young people and money. And so they're going to ask that question. And if Freiburg is an outstanding option, it could blow up in this room because we can't defend the decision for why was it practical to take something off the list. And so I know it may sound annoying to have a rigorous methodology for data collection, but we can do it. It's just comparing apples to apples when you gather it and being able to speak to that. And I would just really strongly encourage this group, or I hope you expand to a larger group, that statements like the most practical option being put out in public in May feel to me like really, really risky when the information to back them up isn't there yet and is half-baked. And so again, I'm going to come back to this. Like, y'all have some time on your side. You're really ahead of the game in gathering this data, slow down, don't publish things like we're sort of making decisions already when it can't be defended to the community.
So,
Who else had their hand up?
Yes.
Yes, sorry, can't see.
I think Jerry's question about is there a committee is the most telling thing for us. And, Joe and I, we asked to be on, on the agenda because that was the process at the time. We actually came with something else to say, but there's been a lot said, and we want to echo what everyone has said, because I think this is a good conversation. And again, thank you for letting us speak, because we know this is hard. These are hard decisions that we're making, and this is difficult. So, but the main concern that we have, and this also goes to that citizen comment issue, is that the process really for a while has, with this committee, and this document speaks to it, is that we are left with more questions than answers. And there is a feeling on this side of the table that there is a lack of transparency and decisions are being made without citizens being allowed to participate in it. And that is concerning. And instead of using the policies that we have and processes that we have, like agendas and minutes and open meetings, so that when people are meeting to have a committee meeting, we're given public notice, and meetings and agendas are coming out, we're given something that's instead called an executive summary, and it's not called a meeting. And I understand that we can fight about those words, but the reality is that important decisions have been made as a result of people getting together who were given power about these decisions. And we don't know why or how or what happened. So I came to this meeting tonight thinking you were on the committee. So one of my questions was, when did Jen get on the committee? When was she removed? Is Malcolm Badger on the committee? When did Sasha leave the committee? I actually had emailed you, Darlene, to say, when did Jen leave the committee? So if we use the processes we have and we really engage with them, I think we'll all get on the same page and we can get back to the simple data collection that Sasha's pushing for. And it sounds like you've got people who are ready to re-engage and maybe do your 2.0 committee. But the reality is that we have our sunshine laws, we have the right to know, and all the way back to our Constitution, we have the unfortunately for you guys, the right for us to know what's going on. And we have to ask you to please, let's get back to that so that we can know what's going on, so that we can engage with you, even if it's uncomfortable, even if we're criticizing what's happening. And if you feel like we're being too harsh and you don't want us to know what's going on, come and tell us that, either in or out of a meeting, we can try to do better. Let's come back to the table, like we talked about in our meeting last week. But the reality is that that's what you signed up to do. So, maybe we can get back to part of that process of letting us know what's happening. So what I'm going to ask, and hopefully you're in agreement with me because we didn't do that about this part, is when the group gets back together, please send out agendas again, send out minutes, send out notices that you're meeting so that we can know what's happening. Because it feels like lots of decisions have been made, like, Kennett and Freiburg are the most practical options. Part of what I'm wondering is, what happened to vouchers? Where did that go? And just one last point, Jen, you said a couple times tonight that you don't know of any of the committees that have engaged the community like we have, or that have done things. Well, I'm just going to tell everyone, feel free to Google Tamworth, because much like we're going to point you guys to the New Hampshire School Board Association as a role model for comments made by citizens, I'm going to refer you to the Tamworth Committee, because they have been a model of civility and information. They have a website. They share minutes of all of their board activities, plus their board packets. I downloaded this tonight. It has beautiful charts and graphs. Kennett, Freiburg Academy. It has questions. It talks about transportation. It says, hey, if we do this, then that. It says, this is the next time we're going to meet. It actually has, not only does it have the survey link, but then it has the survey questions. It tells you if you are a member of the community, you can fill it out. If you're not, you can fill it out. And it includes students, which we started to do when we started the committee. So if you're looking for places to get ideas, I will just say, please check them out, because they actually started their process by coming to Darlene and me when we were set up our process.
I know. And I've seen that data, and we, incorporated some of it,
So one of the things I'd like as a school board member is, again, to go back to understand what are our options, because today I still don't know. And Chelsea, I don't need necessarily data points for that necessarily. At some point in time, data points will be helpful in the conversation that we have regarding what our options are. But I see the process moving forward as to identify what our options are. That's simply, in other words, understand what our choices are. The school board will then take that information and then pile on the different layers to it, because it's not just that, this place is our option, place A, B, or C, or what our options are. We then have to start to construct, what does it look like when we actually send our kids there? Meaning, what's transportation like? And what are the nuts and bolts things like, so that we can have an intelligent conversation with the whole community when we do that. So in my mind, we haven't gotten to the point yet where we open up to the community and start to say, hey, here's our options, and we've identified them. And here's the data that is compiled with those things. So to me, I wanted to know what are our options, and then take the work that was done from that community and plug in the information underneath what those options are. Then engage the community again so that we can have an intelligent conversation about our options and move forward from there. Once we have that conversation or those conversations, then we can develop the second part of the process in which we actually make a decision as to what we're going to recommend to the community.
So I think my question again is, how do we make this a functional, like we have the time, what's the functional next step? And I hear this like, well, we don't have to talk about it now, but why not?
Sure.
Like why not, like we're here, right, to say, okay, so what do we want to do? And Jen, maybe you're saying, no, I want to, as a chair, I want to take more time, and then next month we can come back to it. But I'm curious about how to like build functionality back into the system. And if the choice is by having it exterior, saying, here's how to have a really functional committee 2.0 for these specific things that need to be done that weren't able to be completed. Not because they were done mistakenly, but just because of what this past year was, which was a heck of a lot of work that was, that landed us to this point.
So I'd still like to take a moment. This executive summary was just a recap for Darlene, myself, and for Kevin to figure out where we were. It wasn't a moving forward meeting. It was a recap. So it wasn't a meeting.
Yeah, and it wasn't a recommendation.
Right, it wasn't a recommendation, it was just a recap. So I would, based on this meeting, like to revisit with, the prior committee members to see why they left.
I think what I'd really like to know
too
too
is
is
have a functional.
But also from like Darlene, who was part of this the whole time, to be like, here's what would be a great way to move forward. Because I feel like there's a lot of knowledge there of what we,
I still need to learn from the past.
Yeah.
So before we can move forward, I need to learn from the past. So that's where I stand right now. So I'm not going to make any recommendations at this point until I meet with the past board members to find out what happened from their perspective, individually on the school, on what happened with the committee. And then I can come back and say, is this something as a school board, do we want to have another committee moving forward? Or do we just want to do the work ourselves and make the recommendation out to the committee? It's just data collecting. We're not making a recommendation, we're data collecting on what our options are, so that then we can take a look at our community and figure out what our options are.
I would also say that as a 4-member school board, missing a 5th member and having community members who are willing to help that, like, just from a process and flow standpoint, figuring out how we can mobilize on their labor would be wonderful inside of the data collection that needs to happen.
I agree, but we did that once and the wheels fell off the bus, so we need.
Oh, I get it. I totally get it. So I'm like, how do the wheels stay on the bus?
So I don't want to take the same bus again.
Let's have a new bus. Yeah.
Unless the bus is driven by a driver that is actually interested and curious in being educated by the community, that bus is never going to go anyplace but off the road. These events did not happen to you. A number of members were very clear about board member behavior that unfortunately put them in a position where they could no longer be in this committee. And your language multiple times around needing community buy-in, or where you want to educate the community about your choices, to me is
really disappointing. It misses a huge step where you aren't, and you have made this clear, obviously, in your behavior as a board over the last 2 meetings, you don't want to hear from the community. And that really is disheartening. If your only goal is to educate the community about why you're right, and you're not interested in hearing from the community and meeting the needs of the community, I don't think the bus is going to make it.
So I would just say to that, I'm looking for two different things to move in the process forward. The first thing I'd like to know is what are my options. I don't want to know the bias or the slant on what those options are, or what person A, B, or C might want to send our kids to school. I'd like to just know what are our actual options, so that we can then take that information to know that, okay, it's an option to send our kids to Freiburg Academy. School board then will take that information and then build off of it and say, this is what sending our kids to Freiburg Academy would look like, so that when we have the conversation with the community, because there may be things that the community says to me that I don't understand what that option means. So for instance, if we send our kids to a private school, I have no idea how that works logistically. I just don't. And if there is an option to send our kids to a private school, that's an actual option, and today I don't know. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and I don't know if we can send our kids to a private school. I suspect that we can, but I haven't. That information hasn't been given to me yet. So that if we do send our kids to a private school, how does that work? How do we appropriate money for that and then spend money for that? Do we have options where we could send kids to different locations? I just don't know, because again, I haven't looked at that to know that. So what I'd like to know is what are our options, and then after having an understanding of what our options are, then we go to the community to have a discussion about what those options are. In other words, now we know that, okay, these are our 3 options, realistic as a school. Now we can engage the community and have an intelligent conversation about what those options would look like.
Sasha, and then we're gonna,
I just want to say, Jerry, you said that a couple times, and I remember you saying the same thing at the November meeting where some of the initial data that was collected was presented to the school board. It does not have to be explained to us tonight. I hope as a board you will explore that information that was collected about what your options are. That was incomplete at that time, and I would imagine it is still incomplete, and it was a really good start. I don't know what happened, because I wasn't included, between December and this May 8th check-in. I hope you're speaking to us because you're looking at us when you're saying we don't want decisions being made, you want to know what your options are. I hope you all want to know what your options are, but this executive summary, this last meeting check-in bullets, this comes real close to making recommendations. There's language in here that clearly states that things have been taken off of the table, that there's a preference. I don't think you mean that, but this is in a public space. And so I hope you will go back and say, what are the options? And then you all do the great work you do. But it seems like this huge step was missed. You started collecting the information on your options. That stopped. And all of a sudden, I mean, Lloyd's here, so I hope he doesn't print this, but like here, right? It's here for him. It's in a public document, and it says, Kennett and Freiburg seem to be the most practical options. Jackson School Board will have a conversation about tuition agreements with Conway and Freiburg. Those sound like awfully close to decisions to me. And I just, again, go back to the please slow down, fill in the gaps, take the time to do the great work that you do. The information you had in November wasn't all the information about your options. There was more to collect, and I don't know why the process stopped. I don't need an explanation, but I hope you all ask each other for one.
thank you.
Can I just make a short comment, just a suggestion? I have followed this even since leaving the committee, not just here, but all of the boards, trying to see what was going to happen, because I was obviously interested. It might make it simpler for you all to think about the framework you want. So, to your point, Jerry, are there rules or parameters or boundaries that you feel Jackson cannot go outside of? Are we a town that doesn't use private schools? Are we a town, what are we? What is the education you think is adequate for our students? Is there an amount that would be too high or too low? You know, what are the important guiding items for you all. And the reality is that there really are only a few options, even with what we've done, looking at what everyone else has done. And so the decision in many ways will make itself to get you to a few things. And then you can get to that data collection that Sasha's so emphatic about. And you can push it to people like Sasha or Kate or whoever you think will best do that. And maybe give it to, like, a task to someone to bring it back to you all. And you can manage it in a public forum so we all can see it. I'll be comfortable because you'll be in an open space, transparent. We'll get notes and records of things, right? And maybe we'll all stop bugging you as much. Just a suggestion.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So to me, I'd like to move it forward by saying, like, when we have that public hearing, that initial public hearing, I'd like to see that as kind of here's the options that we can consider as a town. And then people come to that meeting and advocate for those options. Because until we can start, because what I don't want to happen is while we're determining the options, people already start to say, this is where I want to send my kids. Because I'm not ready to hear that yet because I don't understand what our options are. That's all.
So that means the public meeting, we have to understand those options before that public meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
So I
So
think
that we
that
can explain them
Yeah.
to the general public. Yeah.
I'd like to give you the opportunity to work with Kevin and Darlene, if you're still willing to do that, to figure out the process we want to do for determining what our options are going to be. I think that my personal take on that is I think that it might be smart to leave that in-house right now. I mean, I think the school board can probably handle the idea of collecting information about.
We have the statistics, as Sasha said, yes, there's still gaps. But we've got some.
But what I mean by that is if someone can identify what our options are, then we start to explore those options a little bit more so that we have an understanding what those options look like as a board. Meaning, like, if we sent our kids to Gorham, this is how it would look. So like to start to, not just the data about what their curriculum is and how many students they have and what their teacher-to-student ratio is, but like, again, like what's the distance of travel in there? Would we have to buy another bus? Those kinds of things that I'd like to build off of so that we can present to the community in an intelligent way. Hey, if we're going to send our kids to Gorham, then we're going to have to buy a second bus, or if we send them to Freiburg, we might have to buy a second bus. I don't know, but I'd like to understand what the options are first, particularly when it comes to how do you spend public funds in private schools, because I believe we can do that now, but I just don't understand logistically how it works, and I'd like to know, so that when we have a conversation about the community, hey, we're going to send our kids to a private school, understand this is how that's going to work. And that we can. So that's what I'd like to see. Anyways, I'd first like to understand our options, and then present those options to the community for feedback. I think it's probably the smartest way to move forward. I guess we can figure out a better way to do it. I think that's.
Okay. I'm going to stick with my plan and get back to you. Okay. Thank you all. All right. Micah, diversity, equity, DEI, sorry.
Yeah, we had, there's been some work done with the staff, and we had a meeting reviewing it and what the next steps are, and are still kind of, have a pinlet on the board training based on when we have a full board.
All right. Thank you.
I've spoken by email to Gail, to John Stokey, and Susan, and there are no issues with safety right at the moment.
When are we going to start the entryway?
John has been trying to reach the architect who is going to be working on making the final drawings. As you recall, the initial drawing was included in the whole facility, the whole expansion, and he's going to pull that out and do a detailed drawing for that, and then get back together with us. So it's a matter of getting him on.
And when are my peepholes going in?
Sorry?
When are my little peepholes going in?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Email John.
I don't know if those peoples are going to go in.
We do have film for the glass and some of the smaller items, but the big construction piece is still pending.
All right, Whitney Center?
Whitney Center is being utilized a lot. As you can see, the beautiful artwork all around, so that people come in from the community for events. We're able to see the artwork for the students. The Whitney Center's up and running and doing well.
Yeah, I've seen a lot more coming out. Strategic plan?
What's the next, Kevin, when are we getting the next update on that, especially with the transition of
Take a
principalship?
look for the time, I don't know.
Okay. That'd be great. Okay. I wrote something, hold on there. So we had community conversations. So I don't know if Pam or Kevin wants to give a small update.
So we met last Tuesday, a small group of us, I don't know if I forget anybody, Yetta, Jess, help me out if I forget someone, Micah, Jen, Joan, Susan, Kevin and I met with two representatives from the Carson School of Public Policy, New Hampshire Listens, and worked with them. It was a one-time subcommittee meeting to help start planning for a community conversation to engage the community. A lot of what's been talked about here this evening, that rebuilding trust, being able to learn how to have difficult conversations, and to do them in respectful, productive ways. That was kind of the focus of our work. So we gave our input, and now we wait, spacing out on Michelle, and was it Micah? Was that Monica, maybe? Michaela, thank you. I don't know why I have Michael, thanks. So they came, they'll take all of our input, and aggregate it for us and make a recommendation about next steps for us. The when, the how, why, who, how we'll have a conversation. So I'm optimistic. I have worked really closely with Michelle for years and really trust the work that she does. So Michelle Holt, Shannon.
Thank you. Also, we had a joint board meeting with Bartlett the other week, and everything is going great over there. They have some really good options going on. I just wanted to give an update to our community that's sending their students, 5th and 6th graders, over for sports to make sure you're engaged with Bartlett beforehand on their sports options. They seem to be changing a little bit based on their enrollment and their ideas, so it's nothing that we can do, but just as parents, you may want to tune in to Bartlett before your kids go there on the sports side of things. Otherwise, everything else was great for the Bartlett Community Connection. And I think that's all I had under board issues. Committee assignments, I did not send out a committee draft.
They're in the pack.
Right, but I didn't ask people to update them yet, so that was my fault. So I'll send that out if people can update. So I get distracted with other things. And date for next meeting, June 20th at 6 p.m. I will not be here. And we've had no interest in the community for.
It was advertised, put out to the public, and not one person.
You did say it was for Jackson.
And then we discussed the high school options committee at this time. We're going to be revisiting with the past members and coming up with some ideas moving forward to put out there. And citizen comments, any other citizen comments as we wrap up and we signed up for anything?
All I got is some sunshine to add and just say, I don't speak for the whole community, but I thank you for your service. I know it's tough. I see the tension here. We all just want what's great for our community. I'm just putting some sunshine out there. That's my
Thank you. I appreciate that. Do we have any non-public this evening?
We do not.
Lovely. Okay, without anything else, motion to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you all for coming. I appreciate your time.